Good morning. Chapter 13, Lesson 3 is on page 588 today. We're going to be doing the completing the square for these quadratic equations. And in the right-hand side, I just made some mental notes, those 3 steps that are required. Take 1/2 of the x coefficient, square it, and then add it to both sides of the equation to see if we can make the completing the square work. So let's give this a shot. So we're going to look at the x coefficient, or this one's going to be an m coefficient. So we're going to take half of the 8, which is a 4, and we're going to square the 4, which is going to give us a 16. Oops, sorry, before we even do that, I forgot the first part of the equation, which is make sure that we move the 15 to the other side, because when we complete the square, we have to do that. I forgot that step on the right-hand side. So let's take half of the 8, that's 4. Square the 4, that gives me the 16, and we're going to add that to both sides. So we have m squared plus 8m plus 16 is equal to minus 15 plus 16. So this gives us m squared plus 8m plus 16 is equal to negative 1, positive 1, sorry. So if we stare at this for just a minute, we quickly realize that m squared plus 8m plus 16 is nothing more than m plus 4 times m plus 4. And that must be equal to 1. So m plus 4 squared is equal to 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of both sides. So this gives us m plus 4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1. And m turns out to be plus or minus, m turns out to be plus or minus 1, take away 4. And those two answers turn out to be 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And negative 1 minus 4 turns out to be negative 5. So those are the two solutions for completing the square in problem number 11. Move the coefficient to the other side, take half of the x coefficient, square it, add that square to both sides, and then see if completing the square will help you out. In this case, for number 11, m squared plus 8m plus 16 has the two factors m plus 4 and m plus 4. Let's try number 33. It's a little more confusing. It says 4x squared plus blank plus 16. And I think for number 33, I think they're asking us, just like they, let me check. Yes, they're asking us to complete the square. So this is not an equation. But don't forget, when you complete the square, the first thing we have to realize, when we talked about it this morning, was we have to make sure that the coefficient for x squared is just 1. So this gives us an equation that looks like x squared plus some blank plus 4. Okay, well, we know that we're going to take half of that half of that x coefficient, we cut it in half and we squared it. Okay, well, in order for us to get that 4, which was that square, that middle coefficient had to be a 2. Now, this then would be a 2x if we were doing it for just that one. But remember, in this problem, we divided everything by 4, at least in the beginning. So the only way that this would end up being, we ended up with it being 2. We ended up with it, let me back up. We ended up with it being cut in half and squared, which would have given us the 4. So we started with a 2, but we had to cut it in half first, so that must have made it a 4x. Let me explain that again. We're working backwards. Ignore this first part of the equation. We had a 4x, we cut it in half, which gave us the coefficient 2. We squared the 2, and that gave us the 4. So the 4x gave us the 2, cutting it in half, we squared it, that gave us the 4. But the original problem had everything multiplied by 4, because we had to cancel out the 4 and the 4x squared. So what we really have to do is we have to multiply this entire problem by 4 to get us back to the original problem. So the thing that's in the square, this looks like 4x squared now, plus 16x plus 16. So what we were looking for in our middle term turned out to be the 16x. Takes a little bit of work on this one. This was a little tricky. We divided everything by 4 first. Then we found out we had a 4 as the coefficient, the constant. We cut that in half, but in order to cut that in half, we had to double it initially to get that 4x, and then we had to multiply that again times 4 because we originally started with a 4x squared plus 4x plus 16. Not so bad, just a little bit of thinking process there, and we all figured it out. Thanks so much. We'll see you all tomorrow.